It's almost midnight, Watchers. Are you ready to join the Midnight Watchers to talk about their favorite strange and scary movies?
Alrighty, welcome. This is Koji,
And I'm Jennifer.
Hi, this is Quentin.
and we are the Midnight Watchers, and this is episode number 16. So we're happy to have you guys here, and we're happy to have 16 episodes. We're on Zoom, obviously, so we're excited. The sound quality isn't as great as being in the studio, but in the studio you don't get to see all our beautiful faces, so it's a great thing to have here. And I am not in my normal place. You can't see behind me, but I'm actually in my child's room because my child's first day of school was this morning, and I didn't want to move him. So I just thought it'd be easier if I moved and he stayed where he was. All right, how are you guys doing?
I'm fine. I'm in my office. It's nothing exciting.
The home office, or you're still not allowed back at that
I'm in my
co-working
office.
space?
Yeah, I'm in my Glendale. What is it? Office.
Uh-huh. The one where there was a COVID breakout, right?
Yeah, that was COVID breakout. Like maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Wait, are you near?
I didn't go back for like 3 days.
Are you near In-N-Out? Are you near that? No, a different place. Okay.
But what In-N-Out?
The one on Brand?
No, I'm on Central.
Oh, okay. So, okay.
I'm 655 Central. It's actually a really nice building.
Okay. So, this week we're going to be doing the Burning, sorry, that was last week. The Prowler. And it's also known as Rosemary's Killer and the Pitchfork of Death internationally. But an unknown killer clad in World War II U.S. Army fatigues stalks a small New Jersey town bent on reliving a 35-year-old double murder by focusing on a group of college kids holding an annual spring dance. It was directed by Joseph Zito, written by Glenn Leopold, Neil F. Barbera, and stars Vicky Dawson, Christopher Goutman, Lawrence Tierney, and others. It earned less than $1 million, so it didn't do super well in the box office. There was some censorship. Apparently, the Tom Savini's gore effects were too much for Australia and Europe, so they cut a lot of the scenes out of that. The LA Times and Linda Gross in the LA Times, she said that the film was panned for its violent content, adding that the director Joseph Zito prowls around aimlessly without creating an authentic sense of locale. Instead, he delivers a spaced out nightmare in which the characters act like zombies. I thought that was an interesting review. And there's other reviews. The Rotten Tomato, it says 67% approval rating. I think it's got a cult following in the last, since it's come out, as one of the 50 best slasher movies according to Paste magazine. And actually Complex magazine rated it as the 24th best slasher movie. So I thought all those were interesting facts. Why don't you guys, what did you guys think of the movie?
I saw like Rosemary's Killer a long time ago. Actually, I saw it as Rosemary's Killer, and it's not as Prowler back in Hong Kong, because I rented it the VHS, and it wasn't quite. I didn't quite like it then, because I think they cut out some gore effects, and I didn't quite get why the movie was. It's just So basically, what's interesting about this film was that it's also done around Friday the 13th time as Burning, and also the first part of Friday the 13th. And Joseph Zito eventually went on to direct the final chapter of Friday the 13th, which is part 4. So basically, this is his first feature. It got to be known as a slasher feature and a B-movie director. And both films, The Burning and also The Prowler, the makeup effects were done by Tom Savini. So obviously that's, I heard a lot about it a long time ago. So. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it a lot better now because I get to watch it on HD. So and I see the effects in sort of like in much more better details.
Jennifer, what did you think of this movie?
Okay, I'm muted. That was the highlight for me, was the special effects. So great suggestion, Quentin, on this, because considering how old this movie was, Tom Savini, such a legend in special effects makeup, as we talked about with The Burning, that was my favorite part of the movie. was the special effects, was those long, gory kills.
What was interesting was that usually, I don't know why all these slasher films, whether it's Friday the 13th or The Burning, Burning actually didn't have that. There's always this kind of last thing about the killer coming out, or even in Carrie, you know, this kind of like final scare. And I think it was interesting, this is like a spoiler, but for for The Prowler, I like this. I like the final scare to be sort of like not really from the killer, but it's just this, the victims were kind of like, you know, not yet dead. It's kind of weird end, I thought.
I was just personally amused by the way people looked and talked and acted. I wasn't super. I couldn't get into it because I just kept thinking like these people. I was like, did everyone talk like this in the 70s? Did everyone look like this in the 70s? Like the strange police officer or sheriff guy. He was just acting really creepy the whole time. It was actually funny because I was watching Poltergeist with my wife recently, and there was a scene where these construction workers were harassing a 12-year-old girl and making crude sexual comments, and the mom was watching and she was laughing along with it. And I was like, is this the way it used to be?
In Poltergeist? Which scene was that?
It was a scene where she's leaving for school, the daughter's leaving, the sister's leaving for school.
I mean, the older daughter.
Yeah, but she's under 16, and these construction guys are making crude comments, and the mom is watching from the sink laughing about it. And I just thought it was like, wow, it's really interesting to see how the world, like before, I guess you could harass like little girls and make sexually crude comments and it was okay. But it kind of reminded me, there's moments where I was just like, whoa, is that okay for a police officer to do that? And he's like staring at this girl's ass and doing all these different weird things. I don't know. I was kind of taken aback by the what was happening. But I did enjoy the kills. I didn't really understand. I mean, maybe you guys could help me understand a little bit about what happened. I mean, so he lost his girl, right, while he was serving, and then he came back and started killing people. Is that the gist of what happened?
Yeah, so I guess like he went to the war, and then Rosemary, and he wrote a letter to Rosemary. No, Rosemary wrote a letter to him, and then Rosemary said, you know what, I still love you, but you know, I got to move on with my life. I couldn't wait anymore. Then he came back, and then he killed Rosemary, which is at the opening frame. And then I guess, I don't know why, after 18 years, the killing started again.
Oh, okay. So that's what I was confused about, why he was I mean, he doesn't hate young people or young women because of what happened to him? Or, I mean, was that, I guess I saw it's not clear. But Jennifer, what was your favorite part of this movie?
Well, touching on what you guys just said, I think what the movie was trying to say was that he decided to kill again that night because they held that dance again for the first time.
Oh, I see.
Since that's what I took, right? Because it wasn't, I know they kind of skipped over it. This was one of those movies where I had time to like rewind sometimes. Like if I didn't catch something, so I would like be like, wait, what did they just say? Or wait, why are we at this point? So that's why I think I caught that, because I do remember rewinding. Like rewinding like it's a VHS, but you know, going back on the streaming. But I think it's that's why the blonde girl was like, oh, there's another killer out on the loose in the news reports, in the police reports right now. What if she thinks she says that? What if that's the guy that killed Rosemary 35 years ago or whatever it was? And then they're like, no, of course not. And she's like, well, they never found the killer. So that's my take, is that they finally, for some reason, it was like an anniversary year, like 35 years since the last time. And I don't know why did they hold this dance again tonight, but they held it. And so that's why he decided to get dressed up and unearth her grave and start killing all teenagers. Because it wasn't like those were the teenagers that, you know, they weren't his set as teenagers. So the story is kind of just like, they don't really go into what was wrong with the killer, right? The war guy. I mean, obviously, when you come back from war, you might have some psychological damage. So I think that's maybe the only explanation, which they don't even really talk about. Yeah.
But I guess like what the critics did like about it was that it's one of the first movies that the killer ended up to be a war veteran who has psychological, I don't know, PTSD or something. But I still couldn't understand who he was. I think she showed up in the beginning, right? Of this one shot talking to the sheriff or whatever. Then he showed up again, and it was him.
Yeah, he was in the very beginning, and remember he was acting. Whether it was him or the director told him to, but he was acting kind of creepy at the police station. Like he was like doing these long stares and just kind of, yeah, I'm going fishing. He was just doing, I knew from the beginning that he was either a red herring or that he was connected to everything because he was acting weird. But yeah, there wasn't much explanation. I guess he's some kind of sheriff deputy. Right?
So he went to the war, the Second World War, which is 1940 something. And he was maybe, I don't know, he came back 1940 something. And he was maybe 18 or 19, very young, right?
Right.
Then it's 30 years later.
Right.
Which is 1970, end of the 70s, right?
Yeah, so I assume that's
killer.
Right.
That young. That guy just looked a little bit young. I don't know. Maybe he looked like he was in his 50s. That's about right.
Well, I think he that was the other thing. It just wasn't. I guess when I'm looking for these guys, like I liked Michael Myers. I like those guys because they seem more scary. I just wasn't scared by this. I think I don't know what it was about the story, but I think it lacked like the trapped, like in Carrie, the people are all trapped in the room and they can't get out. But like it just kept seeming like all these people were not. I mean, I guess they couldn't leave the room at the dance, right? There's like the dance and they're like, don't leave. And then the lady goes swimming and she gets killed. And then one person goes look for her. But it just seemed like it didn't feel like there was this like they couldn't leave, that they're being hunted. I don't know. Did you guys feel that way?
No, but mostly like all the kids get killed when they're alone though. They usually like, when they're having sex or something, right? Even in Friday the 13th, and that's sort of like the formula. When they're having sex, or they're like alone, or they're swimming by themselves, and they got knocked out by Jason.
Right. Yeah, because no one did get killed as long as they stayed in the auditorium, right? He didn't ever come into that building. So they were right in that because there was a prowler outside. But yeah, go be a heathen teenager and then you get killed or whatever. But yeah, I know. It's like, and why was that girl swimming? Like, why did she randomly go to a pool on the dance floor? Again, I liked this movie for the special effects, and that's kind of what I loved it for upon watching.
I think they spent quite a bit of money on it back then. They spent maybe $1 million, and they shot for like 10 weeks or something, or 8 weeks. I'm just curious why back in the days you had to spend all this time to shoot a slasher movie.
Right, so true.
And they said like the effects were really crucial because I think it takes a lot of days to prepare for the effects. Like with all the prosthetics, I think you have to cast the prosthetics, and then you have to create it. So yeah, I don't know. And it barely made money. I think that it was independently distributed, and then actually it was offered to AFCO Embassy, which is the distributor that distributed Prom Night, and AFCO didn't take it, and then ended up I guess they distributed them. They gave it to another distributor, and then they barely made $1 million.
Yeah, earning less than $1 million. Yeah, they did. They ranked 135th that year at the U.S. box office in 1981.
So they probably lost money. They probably lost like a few $100,000 on this picture.
And Tom Savini was the gore effects guy, right? Tell us. I mean, what other? I know we've talked about him, but did he work? What else did he work on?
Well, he worked on Dawn of the Dead with George A. Romero. That was sort of his claim to fame. And he worked on The Burning. He worked on Friday the 13th. He worked on every slasher movie in the 80s, basically. That were really good. Because Friday the 13th was a huge hit. And I'm not sure you know that Friday the 13th was the franchise that actually financed Paramount. Because they did 13 of them. And they've been doing it up to like, so actually that Friday the 13th was such a lucrative franchise for Paramount, and that it sort of like, financed the sort of operations or whatever.
That's so cool. So there is a wonderful cinematic benefit to the 80s slashers movies, right? It like helped fuel an important film studio. Yeah, because these movies, like, I actually haven't watched many of them. Like, because I think part of it was I was really young when they came out, like a child. And then by the time I was in high school, I think, or middle school, I just remember seeing Jason Goes to Hell, whichever order that one
Jason Goes
was.
to Hell is number 7, I think.
Oh, wow, you're good. Yeah, that one I saw, and I remember I was very disturbed. Like, I have still a memory in my image of my head of watching it at my friend's house, and I was really shocked. And there was like a scene, like a sex scene, which I'd never seen, where he comes in through the tent, and he like comes in and stabs her and slices her in two while she's like riding her boyfriend, and like just horrible. So I haven't seen a lot of slasher movies. So these two, watching The Prowler and then before this, The Burning, was fun because I just never really watched. I haven't seen all the Friday the 13th. I haven't even seen, is Nightmare on Elm Street considered a slasher?
Yes, because that's a more supernatural slasher. So what's changed the formula was that it's 1984. Wes Craven made it, right? And again, like Nightmare on Elm Street, the franchise financed New Line Cinema. So without Nightmare on Elm Street, New Line wouldn't be financed. And then the problem with like New Line went down when they were starting to make like the big budget movies, like A Long Kiss Goodnight, maybe like 1990. Long Kiss Goodnight, The Last Man Standing, and so it's another movie. They made $3 $20 million movie in this one thing, and then so that's what brought the studio down. And then I think Warner Brothers or Turner ended up buying New Line from the owner, who's Bob Shaye. That's right, because Lynn Shaye I knew. So yeah, so it's actually so it's interesting because New Line also made Evil Dead Part 1. They picked it up, and they released it. I think they did okay, but it wasn't as profitable as like A Nightmare on Elm Street. I think Nightmare on Elm Street like was made for $1 million and made like something like ridiculous, like 50 million or something.
What was your favorite part of this movie, Quentin? Why did you recommend this movie?
I recommend it because it's like another movie that Tom Savini did, and you can see like how it's just a very different genre. It's a different way of interpreting the slasher genre, which is actually a little bit more psychologically real with the army veteran killer. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I remember it was just a little bit different than the other slasher movies, which is like Jason is a very he's a supernatural killer, almost like nonstop killing people. But actually in the first part is obviously a real killer. Then somehow in the second part, he became this supernatural killer. I don't know why.
Yeah, that was when I was doing research on this movie. It was interesting to hear about the PTSD and all that stuff because I kept wondering, well, this is actually not PTSD. Like nothing he's showing is an example of PTSD. Like PTSD would be like him like freaking out. He could lash out, but it's very rarely such a directed type of behavior. So it was interesting to see and see the critical acclaim of that because it's like I couldn't find a single symptom of PTSD in the way he was acting, other than he was just crazy. Because it's very and actually oddly enough, I was just writing a script about PTSD, so I've been doing a ton of research on it, and that's why I was like, it was odd that I was watching a movie that's about PTSD or a horror movie about PTSD. But I guess I either like getting into it too much though would have kind of ruined the movie. Because then I don't want to hear like him going to therapy or something. Although I don't even think they went to therapy back then for PTSD. I think it wasn't even called PTSD back then. I think it was called shell shock, I think was the term that they used back then. It was just kind of this thing. Although there is a theory about a lot of the serial killers from the 70s and 80s, because a lot of them came from the 70s and 80s, that they were the children of the people who came back shell shocked. And that because they were raised with these parents who were dad specifically, who were so ruined mentally, psychologically, that they kind of didn't pass it, because you can't really pass these kinds of things, but they messed up their children, and there's a lot of theories around. That's why there's so many more in the 70s and 80s than other years, decades before, decades after. But I don't know if that's true.
The slasher movie is not necessarily considered a serial killer movie. It's more.
No, I know. I'm just saying the PTSD part of it, though, right?
Yeah, what's interesting is you see Henry the Portrait of a Serial Killer, which is I think 1980 something, and that was a movie that actually started the serial killer genre. And the serial killer genre is basically a genre that is not as much of a slasher by the numbers, but is more going into the psychology of the serial killer. So that's another offshoot of this slasher movie. It's a serial killer movie because of Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer that started this new genre where you have like you keep going you have for example you have like anything from like Osai Strangler to Ed Gein to I guess Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a serial killer movie, is it?
Could be a slasher. Don't they just start killing everyone at some point?
Well, no, because a serial killer is that you really you know who the serial killer is and you follow the journey of the serial killer.
Oh, okay.
Right, because a slasher film you're not watching the movie from the point of view of the serial killer, So maybe we should get my friend Chuck Perello on the show because he made a bunch of serial killer movies. And he doesn't consider himself to be a horror movie filmmaker. He considers himself to be a serious crime movie filmmaker because you're actually getting into the subjectivity of the serial killer rather
like a
than
true crime or something.
Because most slasher movies are coming from the the point of view of the victims, right? I mean, Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street. And what's really revolutionary about Henry the Portrait of a Serial Killer is that it's the first film that you see the movie from the serial killer's point of view. And then they started just making them because I really love them. So.
Well, I think we're heading toward the end of this episode. Jennifer, do you have any last thoughts about The Prowler?
Yeah, I would recommend it for anyone that it likes the special effects, the gore, and can appreciate what they were making back then. Yeah, and if you're a fan of slasher movies, I think it's nice to just at least put it in your watch list for that reason, and that reason alone.
Quentin, do you have any thoughts on this?
I agree with Jennifer because it's like it's not like if you just were looking for a good horror film, this is not, or even a good slasher film, this may not be the right slasher film. But if you're looking for something kind of like different and interesting, I think I would try to watch it.
And I did watch this on YouTube for free, so that was great. And I think if you go to our Facebook and our Facebook links, we'll have links to where you could watch this movie for free.
It's streaming on Tubi also.
It's streaming on Tubi. Okay, great. So you could find it. It's not one of the movies that you can't find anywhere. So please, we'd love to have people write reviews. It's really helpful to write reviews. Please go to Apple Podcast or Stitcher or anywhere really and write a review. Best thing to do is let us know about your review so we could give you props. It'd be really helpful. So hit us up on Facebook or Instagram at Midnight Watchers Pod everywhere. All right. Thank you guys so much. And we really appreciate it. And have a great night, day.
Bye.
Bye, guys.